And there you have it. For the 10th time in league history, 10th? Gatlinburg twice, Pensacola, Hot Springs, Scottsdale, Orlando, Chattanooga, Austin, Vegas, and now Knoxville. Our destination draft weekend has come and gone. The house was good, the lake was great, and the wings were mostly spectacular. And now our 14th, season is officially underway, and that is so fucking wild to say. Dan actually pointed out that the Dira only has 18 spots on it, which means we're legitimately close to filling her up. Pause. In which case, I'll have to get another base added to the bottom or something, but we'll cross that bridge in year 19. Before we get fully into the recap, I would like to continue briefly a conversation that we were having about our draft location next year. I think that a Panhandle Beach, Cincinnati, and Denver are three fun, viable options. I'll post an idea of what each weekend could look like in the Discord at some point over the next couple of days. We can continue that discussion over the next couple of weeks and book before too long so that we can lock down our first choice for a house and make sure it best fits our needs. A couple things to note about that. Either we'd like the house to be close to several things that we want to do, or the house needs to be the main attraction itself, being right on the beach, or the house is just so dope that we're excited to spend time there, frankly Hot Springs, where it was the lake house and the boat, and that was the whole thing. The second thing, there needs to be enough fucking beds. If there are not enough, then king beds need to be shared. So the top finishers would get the best queen rooms, and then the rest either get fuller twin beds or they share a king. Nobody should be sleeping on the couch. We're in our early to mid 30s, guys. The third thing that I need to note is that the draft destination needs to be accessible, meaning travel to get there should be as easy and inexpensive as possible. For example, I did a very quick Google, so some of y'all may be able to find cheaper flights, or you have points or whatever, Tim. But a flight to and from Seattle, or at least 5 hours each direction, and costs somewhere between 430 to 550 round trip. A direct flight to Denver itself, however, is closer to 3 hours and about $100 cheaper total, and 2 hours shorter, which is great. Depending where you look, of course. Crazily enough, Cincy is in a similar price range for flights from Nashville at least, but the nice thing is that it's very drivable. It's 4 hours from my house in Antioch. This would also give Dan a teeny tiny chance to kind of do what he did this year and maybe drive up Saturday afternoon and leave Sunday afternoon. I'm not saying we should definitely plan the whole weekend around trying to get Dan there. That's not going to be feasible every single weekend, but it is something to consider on top of all the other factors. Now, we'll continue that conversation another time. This is the moment at least one of you has been waiting for. The first ever 2025 power rankings. We'll start at the bottom as we always do. At number 10, we have fucking me, obviously. How could it not be? I was missing multiple single digit round picks, and that is fucking tough. And plus having a keeper in the highest round in the league, as did Grant. We'll get to him in a second. And that means my current team lacks depth and some star power. This roster, frankly, has a lot of questions that need to be answered, and frankly, I didn't do myself any favors by drafting players that I might not be able to use for 3 to 6 weeks. I mean, also, Derrick Henry's another year older. Pat Mahomes was disappointing, to say the least, for fantasy last year. Ricky Pearsall's a big swing. Pollard and Breece Hall are both on probably less, under 500 teams. There just seems to be a hell of a lot of risk on my team for not a ton of upside. There's a decent chance that starting off 1-3 is my ceiling for the first month, which is a big fucking yikes. At number 9, we have Grant. Grant, you and I were in the exact same boat, missing our third round picks and keeping a player in the fourth. The difference, however, is that Grant dug himself into this hole but got a championship out of it last year, while I don't have shit to show for my lack of picks this year. Grant, I think, has a fine starting roster, though Baker being the sixth quarterback off the board is frankly wild to me. And then pairing him with an obviously aging Mike Evans is certainly a choice. Last year, Baker threw for 500 more yards and 13 more touchdowns than he ever had in a year of his career. And now he's without Godwin for a month or more. Plus, Jalen McMillan is out for a long time with a neck injury. Plus, Mike Evans is clearly aging. If you watched last year, he clearly has lost a step. He is not as fast, and he does not have the mobility. I mean, he's never been an awesome route runner, but he clearly has lost a step. And then, maybe most importantly, the Buccaneers lost Liam Cohen. It feels to me like last year was probably most likely a pretty big outlier, and Baker's likely going to go back to throwing somewhere around like 3,900 yards, 26 to 28 touchdowns, 10 to 13 picks, maybe a handful of rushing yards, which all things considered wouldn't be like terrible. It just would not be the QB6. Frankly, last year that would have been around QB16 or QB17. Also, outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Grant's wide receivers are frankly really volatile, as the aforementioned Mike Evans is aging. Ridley himself is very inconsistent across his career and now has a rookie quarterback on probably a bad team. And Jalen Waddle has a quarterback who's one hit away from being hooked up to a fucking feeding tube. Grant's running backs are good, so that's cool. I'm looking forward to losing to you, Grant, 98 to 74 in week one. It's going to be an awful matchup, I'm sure. At number 8, shockingly, we have Dan. Every year I come away from the draft thinking Dan's team is just kind of whatever. And then every year he makes the playoffs and has one of the best teams in the league. This is a mistake that I am obviously surely making again in 2025. I think there's a lot of opportunity here with Dan's team, specifically with Harvey, Sampson, Drake May. But as of right now, Dan, you only have one starting running back on your roster, and that's Isaiah Pacheco, who took a backseat to Kareem fucking Hunt in their Super Bowl run. Of course, I acknowledge that Pacheco probably wasn't fully healthy or conditioned, but still. Now, yes, this core of pass catchers is elite, including Trey McBride. Awesome draft pick there. Now, I mean, when Xavier Worthy and Garrett Wilson are your 4 and 5, you're probably in a pretty good spot with your receivers. Now, if Dan can figure out running backs, which history tells us there's frankly a strong chance that he will, this team definitely has some helium to rise in the ranks. At number 7, we have Tim. Now, obviously, Josh Allen is gonna score 50 points a game. Plus, similar to Dan, there's a ton of opportunity and upside here. Bucky Irving came on big time late last season. Genty was a top 10 NFL draft pick. Marvin Harrison Jr. was an elite prospect coming into the league with now a year of experience under his belt. The Eagles are probably going to throw more. Golden was a first-round pick. Now Jordan Love is healthy as well. Hampton is a first-round rookie with the entire backfield to himself. Debo is healthy in a high-powered offense, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is so much that can go right here. The thing that makes me hesitate to put this team higher is that fantasy football is frankly chock full of possibility and excitement and what ifs. But frankly, most of those don't pan out how we think. We're full of optimism in the preseason, and then the regular season just kind of smacks us in the mouth. And a lot of that hope, frankly, evaporates in the first week or two. Now, if several of these young guys hit, Tim's team is going to look fucking sick. However, if only one or two do, we're going to look back on this season as having a lot of meat left on the bone. And while I do love a nice meaty bone, that would be a disappointment of a season. At number 6, we have Kevin. Now we're getting into teams that I think are maybe a little bit more stable at this point. I know I said this about Kevin's team last year and he completely shit the bed, but I'm going back to the well. Kevin has a great core of players with Justin Jefferson, Nico, DJ Moore, and Kittle. Then there's still several question marks with CJ Stroud continuing to play behind a god-awful pass-blocking offensive line. Then there's also Achane, who's just a perpetual injury risk. And the Dolphins also might fucking suck. Tyrone Tracy might not keep his starting job. Travion Henderson might not be NFL ready, or maybe the Pats are really bad and there's very little opportunity for him, or. Now, the running back upside of Henderson, Judkins, and Caleb Johnson are all really enticing. I think we all know that Devin Achane could very well finish as a top 5 running back. So there is a decent bit of upside here, and that combined with a somewhat safe floor lands Kevin at number 6 in the power rankings. Speaking of safety, at number 5, we have Patrick. This is a very safe, high floor roster. Hurts is locked in at a top 5 or 6 quarterback. Brown and Jacobs have absolute strangleholds on their backfields, and Jackson Smith-Njigba is a stud. I think he's a legit top 10 wide receiver this year. There's a good amount of upside with J-Mo, Ted McMillan, Travis Hunter. Even if they don't reach their ceilings, I would be legit shocked if any of them were actual busts. And then frankly, Zay Flowers coming off the bench as one of the safest wide receivers in fantasy. That's great. Tank Bigsby could possibly lock in his starting role in Jacksonville based on what we saw last year. There's a decent chance of that. And then Joe Mixon, you got him almost for free, and he's possibly going to join the team later on as the absolute stud he's been his entire career. All of that could give this team a legit shot at a playoff berth if a couple things roll slightly in Patrick's favor. As of now, this isn't a team I'm scared to play, but it's definitely one to keep an eye on going forward. Number 4, we have Chris. Can we just call Chris's team all reliable? Chris drafted some of his all-time favorites in Lamar, Christian McCaffrey, and his team's namesake, Travis Kelce, all of whom have finished number 1 overall at least once at their position in fantasy. Plus, you have Stephon Diggs, who was the wide receiver 3 back in 2020. Now, normally we don't love player names in fantasy team names, but this one's pretty good. We'll allow it. And speaking of names, Chris drafted another Higgins and Jalen, though obviously he doesn't have the same strong genes as Chris and the rest of his ilk. This team, however, lacks what I would call proven depth, but it does have some great late-round dart throws in Ollie Gordon, the aforementioned Jaden Higgins, Luther Burden, Bashal Tootin. Now, injuries could easily derail a playoff run for Chris. There are several players on this team that have gotten hurt a lot. But if history has shown us anything, Chris will usually figure something out. At number 3, we have Sam. This team is rock fucking solid. You have excellent running back depth, including Barkley, Cook, and Connor, all of whom have a great shot to end up as top 10 at the position. Plus, you have a healthy J.K. Dobbins in a super run-heavy Denver scheme, and then Jordan Mason just for shits and giggles. Who knows if Aaron Jones will stay healthy the whole year? He usually doesn't, and I think Mason might have standalone value anyway. Brock Bowers is easily a top 2 tight end, I guess, and the Eagles' defense should be the mean green machine once again this year. However, I have one nitpick. Odunze over Waddle, Adams, and Zay Flowers in the draft was a little puzzling to me. Now, I get shooting for upside. We've talked a lot about upside on the previous teams. But I have a hard time taking a guy who just didn't look great last year over a future Hall of Famer in a pass-heavy offense in Devontae Adams, or Jalen Waddle, who has had multiple really good seasons, and we just know for a fact that he's a good player, or Zay Flowers, who's so damn good and is the wide receiver 1 for one of the best quarterbacks on the fucking planet. Now, maybe Rome Odunze pays off, and I get to look silly, and I will gladly eat my words when that happens. I just have a hard time drafting a guy whose ideal outcome looks like the guys that I drafted him in front of, who have done it multiple times, and in Devontae Adams' case, literally his entire career. I admit, again, I'm being nitpicky when I say that this team is good and not elite, particularly also because I don't think Bo Nix is Drew Brees 2.0 like his stats last year made him seem. But if Bo Nix takes that step forward that you seem to think he's going to take, Sam, that stack with Cortland Sutton is going to be fucking dangerous. This is a team I don't particularly want to play, and I think ought to get into the playoffs with how it looks now. At number 2, we have Scott. Now, this is pod racing. And by pod racing, I mean, quote unquote, how your team should look when you have 3 first-round picks. The draft began with 7 consecutive running backs coming off the board. So when the entire league zigged, Scott zagged, taking Neighbors, A.J. Brown, and Scary Terry with his first 3 picks. Not to mention grabbing DK freaking Metcalf and Cooper Kupp later on, which I think gives Scott the best wide receiver room in the league. The most impressive part of all this was the fact that he went triple wide receiver and still landed Kamara and Chuba Hubbard, who finished last year as the 10th and 12th highest scoring running backs in points per game. Jalen Warren, I think, is a very solid running back 3, and Sam Laporta is a really good tight end option. However, the thing that really put this team over the top was the 11th hour keeper acquisition of Jaden Daniels, and that took you from a great team to an elite squad. The reason, however, that Scott's team is not number one is simply due to running back depth. Like, sure, Nick Chubb is going to get some early season carries. Still can't believe I fucked that pickup, but I'm not sure that he's going to be anywhere close to form after his knee exploded 2 years ago, especially after he came back and looked really sluggish in his limited action last year. All in all, this team is most likely making the playoffs and has a legit shot to really make some noise. Could this, in the 14th year of our league, finally be the year that Scott wins his first championship? We will see. And at number 1, this feels fucking crazy to say, but number 1, we have Jason. I mean, honestly, everyone go look at Jason's team. Find a weak point in that roster. All Jason had was an extra 4th round pick, and he managed to time his picks so well that he now has probably the most dangerous roster in the league, at least in my opinion. He sniped Joe Burrow 2 picks before I was going to take him. Emeka Egbuka, literally the pick before I was going to take him. He took Rashad White, also the pick before I was going to take him. If this was my first year in our league, I would think Jason is the one to beat. This roster is so well balanced with huge upside, maybe the deepest bench of any roster in the league. I know everyone is going to do their best to keep that dumb fucking name off the trophy this year, though, Jason. God damn it, step your game up. Good luck and congrats, though, Jason. There is definitely a target on your back, and we're all aiming for it with our dicks. Now, let's talk briefly about the opening matchups. For week 1, we have games on Thursday and on Friday this week. Let's fucking go, dude. First, Sam will try and keep a winning record against Jason. They're 8-7 lifetime. Sam is up 1 game, so Jason now could even up the score here. This should be a good one to watch for our first ever rivalry week. Go cry to someone else, Tim. It works for most of the league. It's a fun little thing to do, whatever. Secondly, Dan and Scott face off and have perfectly matched team names in the holy shit, how did ESPN allow those teams' names bowl. The third matchup, we have Kevin and Chris, brothers in name, opponents in the league, and they will kick off the year against one another, and they have 6 combined players across the primetime night games in week 1. So this will definitely be one that we can all watch. Notably, though, Sam and Jason have 7 such players. So lots of primetime goodness in those 2 matchups. Patrick and Tim face off in the gigantic Quad Daddy Bowl in a matchup that will almost certainly see 5 or 6 touchdowns of 50 yards based on the guys that you have on your squads. Or this whole matchup will end up 79-71. I don't think there's a middle ground. And then lastly, Grant and I will be slapping each other's dicks as the 2 lowest projected teams. If y'all can grant me, pun intended, a one-time exception to start 4 running backs and only 2 wide receivers, that would be hugely appreciated because my wide receivers look like fucking shit. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for this week's recap. Good luck to everyone except Grant, and go fuck yourselves.